Well, how about that? We got a brake pedal. Installed my brakes last weekend. I just put fluid in. It was a dry system. I used the Harbor Freight vacuum bleeding kit in order to help me do it. And we got a good pedal. So if you're interested in seeing how to use this tool, which is very worthwhile, worth owning, it's a good deal from Harbor Freight. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Restoring Christine. Bill here, Christine at 56 Bel Air. We're rocking and rolling now. We're getting a lot of things done. Last episode, I installed the rest of my brake system. I got my master cylinder installed, got all my brake lines in. They're all tight. I'm ready to bleed the brakes now. That's the next thing I'm going to do, and this is a completely bone dry system, so there's nothing in it. So what I'm going to do today is we're going to bench bleed the master cylinder on the car, and we're going to use a Harbor Freight brake bleeder and vacuum pump kit to get this done. I had a kit that was from Maddox Harbor Freight, and it was the pressure and the vacuum, and it's a little more expensive than this one. It's actually twice the price. This is like 30 bucks. And like a dummy, I used it for solvent and I ruined it. So yesterday I had to go buy a new one, and I decided, let me just go ahead and get the one that's specifically just for bleeding brakes, and we're going to use the lesser tool in order to get this done. So let's get into it. So Christine's got disc brakes. This is an adapted kit. This came from Classic Performance Products. It came with the proportioning valve, it came with the master cylinder, 2-inch drop spindles, metric rotors, metric calipers. So I got all that. This has all been on Christine for quite a while. So I've had this kit on here. I got rid of the single cylinder and the drums on the front a long time ago. So this one came from Summit, and it's a generic GM style. I believe this came in the mid-1970s Corvettes, and it's got it's, I don't know, it's about 60 bucks maybe for this master cylinder, and it's brand new. So let me pop the cap, show you that the system is dry, and that's it. This is painted cast iron spray paint. I got my lines disconnected to go to my proportioning valve. We're going to use the bench bleeding setup that came with it, which really consists of just a handful of parts. It's got one little piece that just rides on the master cylinder to hold these two tubes in place, and it's got a fitting that'll slip into the flare fitting down there. And this is all very, very straightforward. There's not a lot to this. All you're doing is you're creating a recirculating loop so that the brake fluid, when you pump your pedal, it pushes air and or fluid through the little flare fitting. If I can get it in, there we go. Pushes it in through here, and then that air or fluid just dumps back into the top. So what we're trying to do is there's the two pistons that are in here. We're trying to get those cavities to where they've got fluid in them, and then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll put our brake lines back on here, and then go ahead and vacuum the rest of the system. So let's go ahead and get some fluid, top this off, and pump the pedal. So I'm using Prestone .3, brand new, just got this from the auto parts store just a couple of days ago. Fill the forward and rear cylinder chambers, and you can see gravity's already doing something. You see the bubbles? So right now, gravity right now is just draining. It's filling a cavity, so this is fluid flowing. It's flowing through here. The air is coming into these tubes, and you can see it percolating up. So we want that fluid level to go down. You can see how this one is doing a little bit better. Just let gravity do its thing. And then once we get to that point, we get to where gravity's about done, then we'll go ahead and we'll pump the pedal and get the rest of the air out of it. So let's just let that ride for a little bit. All right, that was about 2 minutes, but I'm gonna show you something. All right, see these two tubes? See the fluid level? Fluid level's here, and in the back one, fluid level's there. That's equal to the fluid level in here. There's no more bubbles burping. So we know we should have most of the air out of it. There might be some pockets of air in it, so I'm just going to pump the pedal a little bit in order to exercise that and make sure that it's all out. Let's see what we got. be able to see some bubbles coming up. So I'm just being real delicate with the pedal. And now you can see I'm starting to get the air. You see the bubbles in this back tube? So now it's submerged in liquid. It's submerged in brake fluid. So every time I let off the pedal and that piston comes back, it's drawing liquid from both sides. As long as you got it submerged in the liquid, so there's still bubbles. You see bubbles coming out of the front cylinder. I'm going to keep exercising this pedal. And I'm seeing air bubbles coming on this front. I want it to draw back liquid. It's just rolling these air bubbles back and forth. So we want those bubbles to come out, and then it'll suck back in liquid, so we know we're getting this system dry. That's actually stated backwards, isn't it? We're getting it wet. So we're making sure that we got fluid throughout, and we don't want any air bubbles in there. But if we leave some, it's not a big deal. Any air bubble we leave trapped up here, we got to fish that all the way through the system when we pull it out at the wheels. So we want to try to get as much air as we can out of this right now. There you go. Look at that. So let's look at it up close again. So now I've got a closed loop, and there's fluid all the way through both of these tubes. Both of them. Fluid's down. There's no more bubbles coming up. It's fully primed. We've got everything. We've got this master cylinder bled. So now what I need to do is I need to pull these hoses off and put the cap back on. I want to lock the pressure, so I want to create a vacuum in there, so that when I pull these out, I got time to put my two brake lines back in place without making a huge mess on the floor. So I put a towel down there to catch everything. And now I need to get my brake lines in. I'm going to do them one at a time. So I'm going to do this one. And it shouldn't drip a lot, because we got a vacuum here. All right. Took a little bit of finagling, but I got them. Let's get these tightened up, and we'll move on to the next step. All right, the next thing we want to do, I got fluid all the way to here, to the proportioning valve. And the next thing I want to do is I want to crack open the bleeder valve on this forward caliper. I want to have it pumping fluid or letting the air come out of here. We're going to let gravity do its thing. You know, before we put that kit on, so we're going to let gravity do its thing. Let me open this back up. I'll go ahead and top that back off. And we're just going to wait until we start to see fluid down there. Since that's the front, back when I'm going to top it off, even though we don't have the back setup open yet. All right, I'm going to take this opportunity to point out something. So I thought I had a leak in the banjo fitting on the bottom. See the fluid on the floor? And what was happening is I was looking for the fluid to come out of the nipple, but it wasn't. It was coming out behind the thread. So one of the tricks to getting this sealed when we put the vacuum pump on is to put a little bit of grease around that. So that's what I'm going to do before. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to start pulling a vacuum on this system. All right, so I've uncorked my Harbor Freight brake bleeding system, and it's a Pittsburgh label. It is part number 63391. It's only about $30, and then if you got a coupon, you can get it for a lot less than that. It's a very simple setup. So the way this works is there's a vacuum pump that you just pump by hand. There's a little gauge on it to show you what kind of a vacuum you're pulling. But there's one hose that goes to the top of the cup. The cup has an O-ring, so when you put the cup onto the cap, now this seals, so now the hose is basically vacuum tight all the way from here to here and to this point. And when you hold pressure here, you hold this a seal, you can see I'm building up a vacuum now. You can see the gauge moving. And that vacuum is what's going to pull the fluid through the line. So what'll happen is it'll pull air, and as long as this cup is upright, it'll pull air, and that'll come through. And then when it starts to pull fluid, it'll fill fluid in the cup, but the vacuum pump since it's disconnected from the fluid, it's got this airlock. So what that'll do is that'll just allow this pump to not get any solvent or any brake fluid in it. So you need to watch. If this starts to fill up, then you need to break it down and then dump it out and then get this cup empty. But that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and hook it up and start testing it out. All right, I've got it on there, and I've got my little valve cracked. I've got grease around the fitting, so I'm going to pull a vacuum now. So as long as we're holding a vacuum, as long as we're holding steady here, we know we got a good seal. It's holding true. So it should be pulling, it should be starting to pull. All right, let me show you the action. We're starting to get down there. We got fluid, and even though I'm pulling on it, I'm not seeing many bubbles coming up, but I'm going to keep a vacuum on it and see what it does. All right, after a couple of seconds there, a couple of minutes, not maybe a minute, I'm still holding vacuum on it, and I'm gonna break that now. You just bleed it off. And now, so I was seeing little teeny air bubbles here, but this is a short line, so this is gonna be the easiest one to bleed. So I'm going to go ahead and break this down. We'll move it to the next side, and we'll get the other side done. So now I'm on the passenger side. I've got everything hooked up. Got my cup down here. I don't know if you can see it. I'm going to go ahead and start pulling a vacuum on this one too. So now it's nothing but air right now. But it's starting to draw liquid already. I had it gravity. I had it cracked. So there's not a whole lot of volume in this line going across. But now you can start to see I'm getting some air coming through here. Right in here. Let me see if I can't zoom on that. Starting to see the air bubbles right there. Trailing up. I need to let that stop. So once that stops, then we know we got it. So we're going to let this vacuum. I'm just letting the pump sit with pressure on it. Look at pressure, vacuum pressure. And then a cup is down there that's going to catch the fluid, and we're going to let this come through, and this just looks like it doesn't have any more air bubbles in it. So now I'm at the rear drum on the driver's side. It's the long side, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do it anyway. Pull a vacuum and let that ride. We'll see if we can't get something. Got it hooked up to the back of the wheel cylinder. I don't know if you can see it, but we'll let that go for a little bit. All right, let me show you something where you know you got a problem. So I'm going to pull a vacuum. Watch this. So I'm going to pull a vacuum on the gauge. And look, I'm flowing fluid, and look at the air bubbles. Oh, look at all the air we're getting out of it. Look at all the air we're getting out of it. We're losing pressure. So what it's telling me is this is not a sealed system. So what's happening is right now, I'm pulling all of this air right now from adjacent to that bleeder screw. So that bleeder screw needs some sealant on it. I'm going to put some sealant on it and watch it's going to behave a lot differently. So this time I hooked it up with one of those tapered plugs that goes in. I pull the bleeder screw all the way out, and it's a lot tighter. So now you can see I've got air bubbles moving. I'm holding a pressure, but not completely. So I'm wondering if my rear brake system doesn't have a leak somewhere. It'll draw up, but then it'll drop down. So I might have an open fitting somewhere that's allowing air to come in. One thing I wanted to point out is that as I'm doing that, it's filling up the cup. So I've gone through all four corners now, and what I've had to do is keep recycling the fluid. So as I use it, I go back and I do this. So what I was doing was, every time I'd go around a corner and I would go and I'd pull some volume out of the cup, I'd come here, and if this was low, I know that the difference in how much fluid is low is not necessarily what's in this cup once I fill it up. That's the air that we got out of it. So we put more fluid in the system. So this, I was draining it down, I was coming in and putting the cup back in, and then I'd have to top it off with my brake fluid. So I'd have to top it back off, and that was telling me that was getting air out of the system. So now I've gone all the way around. I don't know if I've got all the air out of the system, but now I'm going to start fiddling with the pedal. I'm going to start pumping the pedal and see if we can't get it. All right, Christine's manual brakes, so there's no power booster to worry about, changing it when the motor's running or something else. So let's see if I got a pedal. Had a pedal and it just disappeared. It just faded. Just went down the floor. Now it hardened. 2 pumps. 3 pump. Okay, yeah. So it's finding there's air in the system, but I'm getting a pedal. Just every now and then I feel like something, it like suddenly just falls. So I think it's doing pretty good. I'm a good ways off the floor. I'm a good 3.5 inches off the floor, 4 inches. So I think that's doing good. Let me go ahead and I'm gonna go around all 4 corners again, see if I can't pull some more, and then we'll see what it looks like. One last note. I started with a quart. This is down about here. I've got just a little bit of fluid left in the bottle, so it went through most of this quart in order to fill the system. I didn't spill a whole lot, so that's about the capacity. All right, I went all the way around the car again, all 4 corners. Didn't take nearly as long. Let's see what we got. Oh, that's a pedal. That's a pedal. That's a pedal. Absolutely. I can feel what I got right now. That little spring right there, those are the rear drums right there. So that's the rear drums trying to kick in, and then that's it. That's on the hammer. Right that. So that's it. That's all the stopping power Christine's ever had right there. And I'm pumping it. It's not getting any stiffer. So I'm going to have to adjust those rear brakes a little bit. The shoes to spin the shoes a little tighter, and then that ought to pull this out. But yeah, that ought to be it. So I'm back at the rear drum, and what I'm talking about is the adjustment here in between the 2 rear shoes. So this is like a turnbuckle that just goes in and out, and it'll spread these shoes a little closer to the diameter of the drum. And I'll have it open just so I can check and make sure that I'm spinning it correctly. But there's a direction, you know, there's a access portal in the back here that you can spin this little star nut with a screwdriver. So I've got it apart right now, and what's on my fingers is WD-40. But anyway, we're gonna get this tightened up, and let's see if that doesn't help it out. So now let's see what we got. I adjusted the rear drums. You can see it from the side now. You'll be able to see how close I'm coming. So just touch, and it travels about that far, and I'm starting to hit hard. Now I need to really bear on it, and that's the pressure right there. So that's the stopping pedal right there. You can see how far off the floor that is. You know, it's got pretty good clearance. The pedal's not pumping up, so I don't have any more air in the system. I'd say we got it. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. All right, so that's going to do it for this episode. Got the brake system bled. Got a really good pedal. Harbor Freight, 30 bucks for this brake bleeding tool. It's worth it. So the next thing I'm going to do, in fact, I've got plenty of daylight, so this only took me a couple of hours to do this, and I was even troubleshooting while I went. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my attention to my fuel tank. So that's, I got an unboxing video first, and then after that we'll put it in, but I'm going to put it in this afternoon. So if you're enjoying the videos, please give them a thumbs up, and if you're enjoying the channel, I'd love a subscription. So until I see you next time, please take care of yourself. Cheers.